can now listen to full-length, commercial-free episodes of the Divorcing Religion podcast on Patreon. Please sign up at patreon.com/Janice Selby or click the link in the show notes. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Divorcing Religion podcast. I'm your host, Janice Selby. I'm a registered professional counselor and a religious recovery consultant. I met today's guest on Twitter and was immediately curious about her journey. Mary Burkhart grew up in the Apostolic/Pentecostal Christian traditions and was heavily indoctrinated into her faith, remaining devout for over 20 years. Her deconstruction journey took her to some very dark places and nearly cost Mary her life. She is now a religious trauma life coach after 10 years of personal religious deconstruction. You can find her at religioninremission.com. Welcome, Mary Burkhart.
Thank you.
It's nice to see you. I know we spoke a few months ago at the conference on religious trauma, and you had the pleasure of introducing one of our speakers, Mandisa Thomas, the president and founder of Black Nonbelievers.
Yes, she's wonderful.
Yeah, so you know Mandisa as well. You've had interactions with her?
Yes, I'm actually a member of Black Nonbelievers, and I'm always grateful to her for the work that she does and for, founding that group, because in my own deconstruction, the reason for that group was evident in my life. There was not really much community, when it comes to being a black believer and then a Black non-believer.
Mm-hmm.
When you're transitioning like that, it's very hard to find community. And so finding the Black non-believers was a breath of fresh air.
Yes, we could call it a godsend, but we know better.
You're right.
I wonder if you would tell us a little bit about your growing up and what that was like, and then what led to your deconversion and how that was. I'm really intrigued. On your website, you say you went to some dark places, and you feel like it did almost cost you your life at some times.
It did. And I was born into it. That's kind of what I say. I was born into it. My mom was apostolic since she was 12, and she wasn't indoctrinated. She found it on her own, but she definitely, obviously when you join, you're indoctrinated eventually, but.
Well, and at 12 years old. Your critical thinking skills are not finely tuned. They're not there. At that point.
Yes, absolutely. But she wasn't born into it.
Right.
And, I was born into it, and my dad, my mom, both of them, very, very heavy in the church, very, very spiritual and religious. And I'm the youngest of 5. Mm-hmm. So there were 4 other children who already had it before I came. And there was a lot of, in hindsight, obviously, toxicity and just moments that you can't really explain while you're in it, but hard to explain when you're out. But growing up, I will say this, and I always make this disclaimer: I love my parents, and I still feel like they did the best that they could with what they had. Mm-hmm. At some point, there is personal accountability, and you have to say, okay, where were your critical thinking skills as an adult? But this is something that you chose. And as an adult, I respect that now. But I was very, very serious about it at a young age. I remember being 5 and 6, standing up in church, giving testimonies.
Oh, wow.
I was very serious, and I just tried to emulate my mom.
Yeah.
Because I held her in such a high regard. And it's so funny we're having this conversation, because I just recorded a video about how the church preys on children and how there's a lot of mimicry and emulation, because children just truly don't understand what's happening. And they just want to be like the people that they love and trust. Mm-hmm. And so, standing up, giving testimonies, going to church. And we were the family that we were at church all the time. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays. You got Bible studies, you have choir rehearsal, for the children, you have everybody come together and clean the church. And then
don't forget prayer meetings.
Huh?
prayer meeting. Don't forget
Yeah,
prayer meeting.
absolutely. Prayer meeting was Thursday. Yeah. So, we were at the church almost every single day for some reason or another. We were at church all the time. And my mom was very, very close to the pastor's daughter because the pastor's daughter raised her. And she ended up becoming co-pastor. And I mean, I always tell people in some kind of weird 6 degrees way, I was the pastor's kid because my mom was just that much in the church. But I was also abused in the church. I was sexually abused in the church. And it was by my godbrother. And I didn't understand, what was going on. I didn't say anything about it for a long time. And then I told my brother one day, because it had stopped. It completely stopped. And then one day he showed up at my school. I was still in elementary school, and he showed up at my school, and I freaked out.
Was he older?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I told my brother about it, just kind of on the way home from school, like, don't tell anybody. I just want somebody to know, this is what happened. And he was just like, okay. I went away to stay with my uncle that weekend, and my mom came to pick me up. And thankfully, my brother had told her. And we were ostracized. We were pretty much excommunicated from the church. That was one of the most confusing times in my life, because growing up, being told that God is love, that, children are so special to him, and that, we're supposed to be honest. Now I'm being honest, and nobody's believing me. They're calling me a liar to my face. I'm 6, 7 years old, and they're calling me a liar. And I was just like, okay, and in true religious form, there was a tear in my family because of how it was supposed to be handled, right? My dad didn't want it to be publicized, and he didn't want us to do a court thing. And my mom asked me, she's like, do you want to go to court? I was like, yeah, let's do it. I know I'm telling the truth. And, but that's the nature of it's just sweep it under the rug, pray about it, take it to God. And it's just not how things get solved. So we moved down to North Carolina shortly after all the trial stuff because we won. But we moved because my mom needed some personal healing from that hurt from the church. And we were away from it for a few years, but never away from belief in God or anything like that. It was still very, very present with us. And then when I was about 16, 17, she started going back to church, and I followed her. And up until I was about 25, I was in it. I was serving in ministry. I was being groomed for leadership. Just very devout. And
very sincere, I'm sure.
Very, very sincere. It was not a game. I was ministering to people, and I meant it. I served in sound ministry, and I loved my pastor. I loved his wife. I was at every event, almost every function, especially when it came to sound. I have worked for, directly being in the sound ministry, I have worked for big names in gospel because they came to our church. And, it was very serious to me. I took it very much to heart, the business of saving souls. And I just knew that one day I was probably going to end up being a minister or a pastor or something. And what started to get it for me, and I always joke with my clients and on my social media about what tipped the scale, because I was always about, it didn't matter where I worked, I was always ministering to people and talking to people about God. And I came across this guy who was an atheist, and he was like, I want to ask you something. Can God create a boulder that's too heavy for him to pick up? And I was like, no. Yes. It was so stupid. It was such a stupid question, but it cracked something in me where critical thinking is concerned, right? And I was just, that bothered me so much. And so I started really examining more of the Bible. And I mean, I have notebooks full of just like notes that I'm reading, and I'm taking notes, and I'm just like, and I'm asking my pastor, and I'm asking his wife, and I'm just like, okay, but what about this? What about that? And I'm talking to my own mom, and there's just things that you always get the same answer. It's just, nobody's just going to know until, you
got to have faith.
You got to have faith. You're just not going to know until you meet God, until God comes back, until, we are raptured up, or whatever is supposed to happen happens. That wasn't okay with me. That didn't sit well with me. And so that little chip in my critical thinking really started to create some fissures and cracks, and just, it broke away a lot. I started to dig more into philosophy and psychology, and just these mental games and tactics, and how things happen. And boy, yeah. What ended up making me leave the church is I lost my pastor. Well, we lost our pastor. He died of cancer. And his wife said something when she told us. She was like, he was scared at the end. And I was like, why would he, of all people, be scared? Like, this man, like, if there is a heaven, this man's got a golden ticket. Like, how could, he was one of the best men I had ever met. He was so sweet and sincere, and he remembered your name after meeting him one time, and I was just like, why though? Why the uncertainty? And that stuck with me for a little while. And I ended up sitting down, taking this, what they call sabbatical from ministry. And I just sat and thought for a little while. And I was just like, I don't know if I want to do this, and coupled with the nature of people in church, coupled with, the gossiping and the backbiting and, the cliques, and I was just worn out. The
humanness of it all.
Very human. And when you really start to get to the core of it, it's all human. But I made the decision. I was like, I'm leaving. And I left church. I got up in the middle of service after being there for 8 years. I got up in the middle of service, and I got in my car, and I left. And
wow.
And it was so funny, because I made the comment one time that I had never felt more close to God than when I decided to leave church. But what I realized that was me being true to myself. I was more aligned with who I am. I was being true to myself and leaving and making the decision to go. And I tried other churches, because I wasn't a non-believer immediately. I was just kind of, okay, well, what else do I need? Maybe this church is just not it for me. So I stayed in the Apostolic faith. I ventured out to sister churches. It just was not the same. It was not, the feeling was gone. And there were too many of those cracks now. And I'm thinking, and I'm like, this doesn't make sense. These contradictions are not lining up. I can't ignore this anymore. And I decided, I was like, I'm not going back to church. I'm not going to do it. And so I started really studying, looking into more philosophy and just human nature, honestly, and really just reading books, about deconstruction. And I'm going to tell you, it's a hard freaking journey. Okay. And and anybody who had to go through it, it is hard. You do not come, especially for people who are indoctrinated, you don't come to that place overnight.
No.
It's a journey, and it's a hard one, because you are essentially, that cognitive dissonance. You're undoing these things that are so ingrained in you, in the fiber of your being.
Yes.
It's difficult, but
it's so much more complicated than when people are dismissive and they say, so what, you just stopped believing in Santa Claus. That
Right.
just doesn't even come close when your entire identity has been built around the religious indoctrination of your
Yes.
parents. And so you have the loss of your community, your identity, and your entire worldview.
Yes.
Everything is topsy-turvy in that time.
Everything. And, you mentioned on my site, I talk about how it took me to a dark place.
Mm-hmm.
And that, when I talk about that, it's referring to a suicide attempt.
Mm.
And I'll say a suicide almost attempt. I'll backtrack.
Mm-hmm.
I was on the outside, all intents and purposes. There was no reason for me to be unhappy, right? I'm single, living it up, got my own place, car, making great money. I'm in IT, hey, I'm going out, I'm on the scene, whatever. But I was very, very hurt and dark inside. And I didn't understand why. Through all the reading and all of the research that I've been doing, I still couldn't figure out what this was. And there were just these noises, just voices, just noises in my head. And I felt lost. Mm-hmm. And I felt like the only way that I was going to be able to shut the voices up was just to end it. Oh, wow. And I had made the decision that I was going to do it. And I was going to call my sister, because I lived out in the country in North Carolina. And I was like, nobody's going to find me for like weeks. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I'm just going to go ahead and do it. I'm going to call my sister and just tell her to pick up the body and hang up the phone. And then I'm going to do it. And I'm done.
Oh, me.
I don't know what was going on. I decided to go to work one more day. Mm-hmm. And I was getting ready for work and I was brushing my teeth. And I had been avoiding the mirror, and I looked in the mirror and I immediately started to cry because I thought about how heartbreaking it would be for my mom. Yes. And in that moment of clarity, I thought to reach out to my best friend, and it was a good thing that I did. She spent 6 hours talking me off the ledge. And man, I will forever be grateful to her for that.
I'm grateful to her. I'm so glad that you're still with us.
Thank you. But in hindsight, I recognized that I had no idea what it was. But in hindsight, it was a void that the church left. Like you just said, I had lost community. I had lost support. I lost friends immediately. Family wasn't talking to me the same way.
Wow.
I was very much in a no man's land. Like I'm alone. Yeah. And as much as I can be on the scene, I don't have those connections anymore. I don't have that support. And I didn't recognize that. And that's one of the things, that's really one of the bigger reasons that I started coaching. Because if I can help somebody come back from that ledge or even recognize it before they get to that point, I'm happy. Because that's not a fun place to be at all. And, it almost, and I look at my life, I'm like, look at what I would have missed out on.
Yeah.
My husband, my daughter, I can't believe that I thought of ending my life, and it's hard because in the moment, you just can't see beyond the moment.
That's right. And it's like I described it, I felt like I was on a gray ocean in a dinghy, in a gray fog. I couldn't see anything, couldn't see any landmarks. I was just alone. Yes. I didn't know anyone else who had managed to walk away from religion and live a happy life. I didn't know anyone else who had been as devout and devoted as me. So talking to you is really interesting. Our stories are similar in so many ways. And just that existential fear and angst and sorrow. Yes. The disappointment, because that fantasy was so beautiful, religious fantasy that we had. And then you're kind of slapped in the face with this reality that life is random and you can do everything right and you still might meet an untimely end. And so we just have to make the most of every day that we have.
Yes. Yes, 100%. And, you talked about, being the only person that you knew who walked away. Well, I'm like I said, I'm the youngest of five. I'm the only one in my immediate family who's walked away from religion.
Wow. Even still?
Even still, everybody
Wow.
else is still all about it, the woo woo. I'm cool with that. That's okay. They've come to a place now where they respect me. I respect them because I'm confident in myself,
Yeah.
and I don't love them any less. But, we just have our differences there and we respect each other's differences, and that's okay.
Mhm.
And my mom still very, very much in the church. I'll ask her, I'm like, how was church? That's fine. I don't mind. I love my mom, and she's really one of my closest friends. And
Mm.
it's just about respect, and knowing yourself. You don't have to cut everybody off. You only do that if they're disrespectful,
Right. So there are boundaries.
Yes, absolutely. If there's no boundaries, then we gotta call this. But one of the things that made me laugh at what you were saying was you didn't know anyone who had walked away and lived a successful life. And you will never hear that, right? You won't hear that in the church, because what they tell you about leaving the church is that everybody becomes a reprobate, or they get pregnant untimely, or they get sick untimely, and they have to come back. And all of that is because they left church. So that's why I was laughing. One of the funny stories for me about my deconstruction is my learning about reprobated minds. That was the topic in church, that when they talked about, you listen, because that's how you're supposed to stay right here, steadfast in God, because you do not want to become a reprobate. You do not play with leaving the church. God will take your mind, and I was just like, okay. But as I have deconstructed and grown as my own individual self, you learn that that's a tall tale. It's a fantasy, and it just fits right into the rest of the fantasy that they sell you.
And a threat to keep us from doubt, making us suppress doubt when it arises, because we have to just keep our eyes on the prize, just keep looking forward. It's a danger to look around and see what else is out there.
Yes. And if you ever notice, they don't really mind you having doubt. They just don't want you to leave. Don't act on it. You can have the doubt. Just trust God. Don't leave. Have the doubts. It's okay. Ask your questions, but accept the answers that we give.
Did people reach out to you when you left?
No.
And that's what I hear overwhelmingly. A lot of it's just crickets. Like you leave, there's nothing. And it's like, wait, I thought maybe somebody would have reached out, but
I'll tell you when they started reaching out was when I started to gain confidence in my new life.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because they were waiting to see if I was going to fall. They were waiting to see if I was going to come back. Mm-hmm. They were just trying to figure, okay, well, what's going to happen. No, I'm good, and then now I still people. It's so funny. I got a friend request from someone today that I used to go to church with, and I'm like, okay, but it doesn't really, affect me. It doesn't bother me. I've grown so much, and I'm just happy. I'm happy to be here. When you start to really understand that, depending on what philosophy you subscribe to, that life really doesn't mean anything, and you have to give it meaning on your own. Then things start to matter a lot less.
Yes. And then at some point you met and married somebody. And did he come from a religious background as well?
No.
Yay.
But it's so funny though, Janice, because I always tell him, I'm like, I'm so envious of you. You didn't have irrational fears of hell and, of dying and the rapture and all this other stuff. You didn't have that. And so when he talks, or when we first started dating and he spoke, he might say something a little bit what we consider blasphemous. Mm-hmm. And I would still have that kind of gut reaction. I'm like, oh, why did you say that? But just not realize, like, he doesn't have these irrational fears. And I'm so envious of you. How do you grow up like that? What was that like? Tell me.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
It's refreshing.
It really is. Yes. And he calls himself a militant atheist, but it's also, it's the reverse for him. It's fascinating to hear me talk, about my childhood and how I used to go to church all the time in my religious upbringing because he just was never exposed to that.
How has your religious family coped with you marrying someone who isn't religious at all? And there are other differences too.
Yeah, I mean, the different race thing, but we've always been pretty open. I mean, I did the rainbow. He didn't know one cares, But as far as me marrying someone who was not religious, I wasn't religious when I married him. So they just wasn't a shock. By that point, it was like, yeah, it makes sense,
So you avoided a church wedding.
Absolutely. We, and that part, I don't know how they truly felt about. We had an officiant who, it was a non-religious ceremony. There was no mention of blessings or gods or anything like that. And we loved it. We were just like, yes, this is fantastic. But we got married on a lake, and a beautiful park lake. And it was wonderful. It was a beautiful ceremony, and everyone was standing. It was, I was just like 3 months out of having a baby. I was like, I don't want to wear shoes, but it was very us,
Nice.
and that was what was most important to me. And my dad, he had come down from Delaware, and my mom, she lives in North Carolina, but she was there, and it was so much us. I told my husband, I was like, we've had so much opposition, and such a rough start to our relationship. I don't want anyone to give me away because I don't feel like anyone deserves to give me away. Mm-hmm. I'm giving myself away to you. Mm-hmm. And so I started from the middle, he started from the side, and we walked down and met each other. Oh. And we walked up to the altar together. I love it. The arch together.
Yeah, sweet. That is just so great. And I feel like that's what, and people obviously don't even have to get married, but if they do, it should be exactly the way they want it to be.
Yes.
And that's, it's meaningful in that way. But
you know what, even though we had a good wedding, I still look back because we celebrated our 5th year this year. I still look back and I'm like, we should have eloped.
Boy, you're not the first person to say that. That's for sure. So then you left religion and you married a fellow heathen. So that's just wonderful. And then you somehow transitioned into coaching and working with other people who are recovering from religious trauma.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So that story is kind of crazy because when we first moved to West Virginia, I had met a woman who was a coach, and I really liked her. I thought she was very sweet. I loved her energy. And we had a kind of a discovery call together, and I told her about my situation, my life, and she was just like, Mary, you have a story. I was like, what are you talking about? I'm looking about, I'm thinking about getting coaching, like, oh, I'm a wife. I think I'm a mess, help me out. And so she was like, well, you have a story. You would make an amazing coach. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think so. Mm-hmm. So anyway, we talked for a little while, and the only reason I did not sign up with her is because she was like about crystals and magic and like
lots
prayer,
of
meditation. And don't get me wrong, I love meditation, but like she was about like praying and crystals and spiritual. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, no, I can't do it. But a few years later, fast forward about 4 years later, I was talking to my husband, and I was like, I kind of think I want to be a coach. And he's like, really? Yeah. I think I want to be a coach. And he's like, well, what would you do? Like, what would you coach? And he's like, you should do relationships because you tell everybody, like everybody comes to you for the relationship crap. I was like, you know what? I bet you I could, but that's not what I'm passionate about. And so what I thought about was creating a space. Like my first coaching title was like the non-sectarian coach, because I just wanted to create a space where people could come and they could get help without all the woo, just devoid of that. And I met another woman who ended up being my coach. And she, for some, I don't know what kind of magic dust she sprinkles over her presentation, but she just inspired the hell out of me. And she's like, what can you talk about at length all day long without anybody prompting you? And I was like, religious trauma.
Yes, same.
I can definitely talk about that. And then I was like, okay, so this is it. This is my niche. I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing right now, because ad nauseum, I will not shut up about religious trauma and how the church causes it. And so I started just kind of slowly, and I'm still starting slowly. I take my time. I don't do anything more than what I want to do in my business, but what I want to do is always help people, whether it's coaching them, whether it's putting up a post and giving some educational information, giving some positive, energy, whatever the case may be. And I ended up freaking loving it. I was like, because I had been under this delusion, which I feel like the remnants of were from religion, where I just didn't feel like I had anything to offer the world.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel I have my degree in IT networking. That's all I felt like I could offer the world. I was like, I can fix your network. That's all I got. I don't have anything. I don't have anything else to give you, But as I really thought about my experiences in my life, I'm like, I've been there. I've been to the edge and I've come back and I've been successful. I've rebuilt myself. And the thing that I'm most passionate about, which is actually the program that I'm going to be starting in January, is the identity portion of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because religion requires it's like shampoo. It strips us down so much. Okay.
It's a sham. Yeah.
Yeah. Shampoo. There you go. It's a sham.
Yeah.
And it just strips us of everything. But in its own way, and it tells you that's what's required of you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because this is how you'll know your mind when it comes to Christianity. This is how they know your mind, is that you are called by my name. You look the part, long skirts and no makeup and ponytail and no piercings, no tattoos, very, very plain. I used to walk into stores and people would be like, "You're holiness, aren't you?" I'm like, "Yes."
Mm-hmm.
And think that was a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
I felt accomplished. Like, yeah, I did my job.
You were identifiable.
Right. Yeah. But being identifiable, you were really not, you were identified as part of a unit, as part of a bigger entity, not identified for who you are as a person or what you contribute,
Mm-hmm.
And so that's so important to me, because I didn't know who I was outside of religion. I had to figure out, who is Mary? Who is she? What is she like? What does she really want to do? Where does she really want to go in life? How does she want to wear her hair? Shit, I don't know. It's just, it's every little thing that we don't think of. We build this mountain of insignificance. It's not significant. When we're in the church, how do I want to wear my hair? That's not important. I want to wear lipstick, or I want to that's not important. What's important is serving God. We're putting all these insignificance into a pile, and before you know it, it's a mountain of stuff that you've completely neglected, and your identity is buried in those things.
Mm-hmm.
Who you are, what you want to do, where you want to go in life. We've buried it.
Yes, I feel, especially for Christian women, it's a process of becoming less and less. We never want to outshine our male counterparts. So we're constantly monitoring, the self-monitoring that goes on. And then it also is reflected physically. And if we are in kind of holiness movement type of churches, and we cover our hair and we don't wear jewelry and we don't wear makeup, it's like we're trying to appear. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Trying to diminish ourselves as much as possible, fade into the background and be that good, what is it? Psalms what is
Yeah, the Proverbs 31 woman.
Yes.
Yeah, and
I used to know
I
that.
decrease
I'm
and
so
he
happy
increases.
I forgot that scripture. But yes.
Yay!
But
Victory.
yes, you just, you're trying to be that wife, you're trying to be that woman. And that's sad, that you're trying to emulate this impossible thing, first of all, because you're not this woman. This woman is whatever man dreamed her up in this completely misogynistic book. Okay. And so, but yeah, I agree. We always try to diminish ourselves. And what's so funny is that because I was of marrying age while I was in the church, there was always this, this person, what do you think about that? What do you think about this? And I always thought I'm going to have to meet my husband in another church because I don't want to marry anybody here. I didn't like religious men. I didn't. And because I've seen what they turn into, I see what they become, and the whole power, man is the head and the woman is, the support. And like, that is so completely absurd and distasteful. But we buy into it so hard because they sell it with this air of grace and dignity. It's none of that. It's none of that. You're being groomed to be a mute.
Yeah, it's unhealthy. That's exactly right.
Unhealthy.
Yeah. Wow. And so you mentioned, I think, a workshop or a program that you have coming up in the new year.
Yes.
What will that be about?
Identity after indoctrination. That is I'm very, very happy and passionate about this. It's basically group coaching, and it's just to get people together and to really help them understand that they're not the only ones. We're a lot, or big in numbers, and it's more than what the world would think, right? It's what we would think, because when you leave the church, you leave by yourself, and so it's hard to find that community. And like I said, religion is shampoo. It strips us of everything. One of the toughest things for us to do after we leave is to find out who we are. And my group coaching program is about helping people to really tap in to those inner thoughts, those inner monologues, those inner desires. It doesn't matter what it is, find yourself. Let me help you. Let's guide it. Let's fucking crack it open,
Yeah.
And let's just dig deep. People have discovered their sexuality is different. They've discovered, what, I actually don't like this, or I don't like that. I want this in my life, and a lot of the reasons it's hard to pry that open is because of the residual fears that we carry from religion, the condemnation, the judgment, and then the ultimate judgment, the irrational fears of hell, what's going to happen. And we still find ourselves kind of erring on the side of caution unconsciously, so that's what my program is about, is really helping people to move on beyond that and own their identity.
So who is likely to connect with you? Are they young? Are they old? Have they only come out of Christianity, or specifically come out of Christianity? How are they finding you?
So it's not age specific. It doesn't matter how old or young you are. If you can, speak to your experiences, that is for you. As far as coming out of the church, yes, it would be people who have come away from religion and are looking to find out who they are. They're struggling.
But Christianity in particular?
No, it doesn't have to be Christian. You've come away from religion as a whole.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, you've come away from religion and you are really struggling to find out who you are outside of that religious establishment.
And so is your group size 10 people or 20 people or 6 people?
I'm opening up 25 seats.
Wow.
Because it requires a lot of me. and I want to be able to give as much as I can. And so, it's going to be exercise, very interactive. Don't come if you're not ready to put your best foot forward, because I'm going to push it out of you. You're going to be tasked with, okay, well, I want a piercing. Go get it this weekend. That's what I want to see when you come back. That's the kind of pushing that, it's healthy. You never have to do anything you don't want to do, but I'm going to be that encouraging voice to say, you have the right to embrace this part of yourself.
Yes.
You have the right to own this part of yourself,
I love
to
it.
live and you owe it to yourself to give this to your life. So
Beautiful.
I'm so excited, and I love to see the transformations and people just kind of feeling lighter. It's like, yes, this is more. I feel more comfortable in my skin.
Oh yes, that's what it is all about.
Yes.
Does it take place over a weekend, or is it every Thursday night, or how do you do the program?
It's an 8-week program, and it's going to be once a week. But everybody gets a personal session with me. That's why I say only 25, because everybody's going to get a personal session with me, and we're going to talk about your goals. You're going to create lists. We're going to go through them. It's going to be very interactive, and I want people to come and be able to get their questions answered, to voice their fears, to be able to voice their concerns,
Right.
And I don't want to give away too much, but however, I'm excited because one of the things that I am planning is an anti-Bible study. And so it's like where the things that you're holding on to, these scriptures maybe that might be sticking with you, that's bothering you. Let's talk about why this isn't accurate. Let's talk about why this isn't true, what it means in that time that it was written. You know what I'm saying? So let's have the anti-Bible study.
Oh, that reminds me of a friend of mine, Stephanie McCown, who's an artist, and she does what she calls blackout Bible poetry. She's no longer a believer. She'll find a psalm or a proverb, go through there and black out every word she doesn't want until she makes it say exactly what she does want. I love that idea.
That is awesome. I had never heard that before. That is fantastic. There's
an idea for you. I just think it's great. And so you talk with people, they have a one-on-one with you on the phone, and then then there's group work involved, like group sessions as well?
Yes, there's group work. And the group work is more of, we're going to open up, we're going to talk. I mean, you never have to share anything that you don't want to, but know that the more you can get off of you and have that support system, you're building community, and like I said, when you leave religion, that is one of the things that you end up missing the most. Is the community, that support that you had, those people that seem to know what you were going through, And so bringing these people together and being able to, I hope that these connections can go on beyond this group. My goal, I always tell people, my goal, I don't want to coach the same people. I don't want to coach the same people forever.
That's right.
I want you to go on and be successful and come back to me and tell me, listen, Mary, this was awesome. Thank you so much. I'm good. I'm well on my way.
I love it. It reminds me of my divorcing religion workshop. And that is in a group dynamic too. And I keep it in a smaller group, around 10 people. But for the same reason you're talking about, we lose so much when we lose our community. And this is an opportunity for people who were previously strangers, but who all can have some level of understanding of the loss that everyone else has gone through when you were devoted to your faith. And so it's an opportunity to share in that safe space and receive support and offer support. So I'm a big fan of group work when it comes to recovering from religious trauma. And another group that you mentioned to me has been really enjoyable for you is Black non-believers.
Yes, I love that group. It's so let's talk about this for a quick second. So, being a Black woman in America, you're automatically, doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what you look like. They automatically think you believe in God. That's 9 times out of 10 you're associated with, because Black people are the most religious demographic. Okay. And it's so difficult to separate yourself from that. Like I said, in my family, I am the only one to do it. I walked away from religion and I'm happy and I'm better for it. My family cannot fathom doing that. They can't fathom that act. It's just, it doesn't exist in their mind. That's just no other alternative except for religion. And because you have families that are so, Black families that are so heavy in religion, it becomes that increasingly difficult for people to walk away. Mm-hmm. And so what Mandisa has done, the community that she's created in Black non-believers, it's necessary. It is vital. We need this because we need to see, just like representation matters in television, you need that community. You need to see that in the community around you, that people have done it successfully, that people don't regret it, that they're living their lives and they're having an amazing time doing it, you know? And one of the things that religion likes to tout is that you can't be anything without God or a God.
Right.
But what they don't want you to know is that tragedy happens in and out of church and in and out of temple and in and out of mosque. It happens everywhere. Okay. It happens everywhere. But so do good things. Good things happen in and out of religion. Fantastic things, you know, and it's important to be realistic. You know, you leave religion and, you know, don't expect your life to just be like Mary Poppins floating through the air. You know, that's just not how it typically happens for people. But you can still have your ups and downs and be a happier person for it, a better person for it. And so I love Black non-believers because it's just an array, a rainbow of people who, you know, support the movement, and they're educated. And, you know, those are some of the most educated people I have ever spoken to. I love that because, you know, our representation, especially in the media and the entertainment world, has been so lacking education, been so stupid and dumbed down. And so, you know, when it comes to church and leaving that environment to go to a community of non-believers, and you see your people, man, they're talking history. They're talking about philosophy. They're talking about all kinds of facets of life, schools of thought. And, you know, it's amazing to me. Yeah. And I love it. I love being a part of that.
It feeds your brain. Sounds fantastic. Big shout out to Mandisa Thomas, the founder and president of Black Non-Believers. And also, it's been a pleasure interacting with Jeremiah Camara, who's a filmmaker and who has really chronicled kind of the rise of the Black church in America and how it had its roots in slavery. Really appreciate Jeremiah's work on that topic too. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for the invitation.
I didn't know I'd laugh so much. It's just been great. And I want to thank everyone who's joined us on the Divorcing Religion podcast with my guest today, Mary Burkhart. And you can find me at my website, divorcing-religion.com. I work with clients one-on-one, and also I facilitate the Divorcing Religion group workshop. Take care, everyone. We'll see you again soon.